This principle is one of the main influences on club head speed and distance, but I guarantee you will never have heard of it. When we look at the best golf swings in the game, one thing that is clear is they're not static movements, they're more dynamic and flowing motions. They all take advantage of a principle known as force precedes motion. In essence, they are able to transfer force throughout their golf swing in a more efficient manner. Traditionally, we think of the golf swing starting from the second the club starts to move in the backswing. This is often because when we record a video of the golf swing, that is the moment we start analysing. However, the good movers have already started producing force before that club even starts to move. So what I mean by this is, when that club starts to go away, we have to create a force. Now, if we create a force just through the hands and arms, we can then impact the club face, sometimes in a more negative sense, and influence that club plane. Whereas when we look at the best golfers, we see a lot more of a motion starting to go towards the trail side before that club goes away. We almost see this little bit of a bump, a shift, or a trigger point that starts to create motion from the lead side into the trail side to create some force through the handle of the club into the backswing. This phenomenon is known as impulse. This is force times time. In short, they are creating more force over a longer period of time. Because they are creating force earlier with this movement, this force preceding motion principle, they are able to then create a higher amount of impulse. So like all good movers demonstrate, they are able to create force preceding motion from the ground up, helping them move effectively and create large amounts of club head speed at impact. So research has shown that the higher amount of physical impulse that we can create, the higher amount we can increase the club head speed. We have to be able to transfer physical impulse into biomechanical or technical impulse into the golf swing. Therefore, in this video, let's have a look how we can increase more vertical force and improve that impulse from the ground up. Firstly, we need to measure our physical impulse capabilities. Using force plates, we're going to look at a counter movement jump impulse numbers. When we actually look at the golf swing, we know from biomechanical data that the golf swing has a very similar movement pattern and transfer to a counter movement jump. So in that transitional period, we are creating that loading and unloading phase, so that vertical push down and out the ground, done extremely quickly and extremely powerfully. The players who can essentially create more impulse over this given movement pattern, by the time the club gets to mid downswing, essentially are able to put more force through the handle, through the grip, and into the club head at impact. So through testing the counter movement jump on the force plates, we get a clear impulse number. So with this ability to create high amounts of force in this key movement pattern, has a strong scientific correlation to the amount of club head speed potential you can create. In order to improve this impulse number physically, we need to improve through training. We can do that through lots of jumping like this, loaded jumps and heavy explosive lifts. So when we look at those test results, we can see I've created an impulse number average of 236 newtons. So it's almost 234 kilograms of force roughly in that explosive vertical force with a loading phase and unloading phase, and whether we can transfer that amount of force more into the golf swing to have higher club head speed. If you have high physical impulse and low club head speed, we know we need to improve some biomechanics, and if it's the other way around, if we improve some physical components, not only will that allow us to be more stable, lower risk of injury, and potentially move better in a more efficient way to create that same amount of club head speed. So to improve this, these are 4 key exercises we can do physically to get a higher impulse. We can do the testing exercise, so the counter movement jump, hands on hips, real explosive, reset after each one, work to 6 reps, 3 sets of each to try and implement it into your training program. Secondly, we can do that with a loaded version. There's lots of ways we can do that. We can do this with a barbell on the back, a hex bar, a dumbbell, or just for practicality use, a heavy medicine ball, where we have to overcome that extra weight but applying the same motion. So just with this version, letting it hang and trying to get as tall as possible, letting those arms relax. Next, we can do a loaded medicine ball throw, where we're trying to focus on that movement pattern of the step in, so that creates that, you can see that little bit of push into the ground and then out and throw. So we want to do this as hard as possible, step, throw. So again, focusing on that step to get some vertical push in and out the ground explosively. And finally, we can use the heaviest speed stick. Because of it being heavy, we can't just move the arms really quick and overcome it with brute force. We have to create some impulse. So that ability, as we were talking about earlier with the best movers, the feeling of moving hard, in and out the ground, really trying to create that higher amount of force throughout the whole motion. Those 4 exercises alone will help potentially increase your physical impulse capabilities. We'd also make sure we need to do that with strength, but if we can get the explosiveness and increase that number, our ability to produce higher amounts of impulse in the golf swing are increased. Now we're going to go through some swing biomechanical drills that we can apply in a golf setting to help transfer that physical force into more of the technical force in a simple way of putting it. So the starting point drill we want to look at is a stamp into the trail side. What I want you to think of, if we're trying to create force before motion, i.e. we need a force going in the opposite direction from the lead side before that club comes away, then we need a drill that creates that excessive feeling, i.e. that's a higher amount of force over a longer given period of time, impulse. So what we're going to do, again, taking a heavy speed stick, and I want you to think of one of the long drivers you might have seen where there's very much a lot of kind of one side to the next, which gives that pressure shift earlier. So we're going to go stamp and then turn. So stamp and turn and then swing as hard as you can. So forward, stamp and move. And we're going to do this with real high effort. You see how I've really pushed into that trail side. And naturally that backswing now is really intensified. It's gone much harder, much quicker, and as a result I'm creating a much higher impulse. And then we're going to apply that, try and hit a golf ball. I'm using an iron here, but I would probably recommend using a wood of some kind on a tee. Not too important, but we can then just get that easier contact. We're not looking for quality shots, but we are looking to create that same feeling. And straight away, I could feel that ground having to work out of it in order to make contact with the ball effectively. This next drill is a drill used by one of the key long driver coaches, Lee Cox. Again, everything he's coaching is about increasing impulse for the most part, because obviously that's all about maximum clubhead speed. So again, using this speed stick, you're essentially going to try and create that more excessive motion. See how I'm moving around? So for me to go to my right, I've got to go left, then right, right, then left. So I'm creating a force to create the motion. So I'm going to try and do that principle. So I'm essentially dancing around. You can see how there's lots of movement. I'm going to go to the top of the backswing, almost feel like I pause, and then really move hard and swing, which is forcing you to create some traction and pushing out the ground and knowing where those timings or those impulses are. So there, turn and move, and we can see I'm really getting hard out the ground with that movement. Same thing with a golf club, and then can we get that feeling of pushing down and out. And although that's going to feel really strange to do, it's really helping that energy from the ground out. I'm having to utilize some vertical force in every motion to create the right timing. So the final drill helps piece all that a little bit together. You're going to go from more like excessive drills to really create the feels into a drill that's not quite as excessive, but helps you have to learn to promote that. Starting with the speed stick, the heavy one again, just helps because you're not worried about hitting the ball, so you can create some feel. What we're going to do with this one is feel like the club starts further out in the forward swing position, because this then means we've got longer, so we've got technically more time to create that force. So if we're creating a high amount of force and over a longer period of time, naturally you're going to increase that impulse. So what I want you to essentially be feeling is here and then moving hard and swinging as hard as you can. A good feel or visual you want to do is imagine there's a resistance band attached to the end of the club or stick in this direction. So if I had a resistance band attached there, in order for me to pull it and stretch it, I'd struggle to do that just with my hands and arms. I'd have to essentially move and create that real force. You can see how I'm pulling and pushing. So I'm there, move and swing. So we're trying to do this with high intensity. Think of the resistance band that you've got to overcome it. So again, I would recommend doing this with a driver off a high tee because it helps the pushing motion. But I'm going to just use an iron for this example. Obviously, it's always a little bit awkward doing this with a ball because if you're starting here, you're gonna have to come across the ball, but just go with it. So we're trying to feel, you see I'm creating that little bit of impulse early, that's almost my flow state. I'm gonna go this way. Think of the resistance bands, which then creates that real high intensity to get the energy moving for longer and harder. And now I'm just gonna hit it as hard as I can. And there straight away, although the timings feel a little bit awkward, the intensity, the force, the amount of effort feels greater because I'm creating that higher amount of effort and force over a longer period of time, which is that higher amount of impulse in the whole golf swing. The more I can do that physically as well, the more efficient and easier that will be to apply to your swing. So in this video, we've managed to talk about one part of the formula, a really key component to increasing club head and ball speed. However, the other part of the formula is increasing that time in a more effective manner. Although we've talked about time in this manner, we need to do it also in a way where we're increasing essentially the amount of rotation and the distance the hands travel. More time, more force, more impulse overall. In order to know what to do for that, watch this video next.